good segue into the work that CPAMO does. This particular session, we're looking at CPAMO, where it used to be operating an equity, diversity, inclusivity arts service organization, and decided to occupy space at this table and minds and thoughts with Erin Jones. Erin Jones worked as an actor, theater, board director, publicist, director, and playwright in the Greater Toronto area for the past 15 years. And Erin is one of the, now we are going to be co-directing Cultural Tourism in the Arts Movement table together, as Charles is also transitioning to another beautiful opportunity after 20 years. So thank you, Charles Smith, for 20 years of amazing work in developing this organization, this beast of a thing that is literally staffed by 4 people. We do a lot, and we thought it would be interesting not only to talk about the work that CPAMO does, but also the work that we're doing jointly and moving this organization into the future. So, Erin, we'll start by talking some about the organization structure of the work that we do.
I can do that. And I think we should not assume everyone always knows us too. So maybe we can start there, because I joined CPAMO in the last few years, and it just seems like, where did the time go? But maybe we can start a little bit about us and what inspires us about the work as well. I came across CPAMO and was so inspired by some of the festival work and the conferences that I basically followed up with Charles and said, hands up, how can I help? And that became the start of a great relationship. This work feeds my soul and is so important to me for what we do. To tell you a little bit about why that is, I have 2 lives. One is the corporate side, where I do organizational development, leadership development, training development, instructional design, all the corporate works. And that work can be quite fulfilling, but in a different environment. And because I love the arts, the other side of my world is theater, acting, directing, playwriting. And I would love to see some of the things that I do in the corporate world bring themselves to the theater world, so that we are truly creating an inclusive environment, an environment where untold stories are being told. And I think all of us have experienced where that doesn't happen. So an opportunity to bring my worlds together was something that really shone out for me. So that's what brought me here and relates to the work. So we can talk about the many different areas of focus, but Kevin, please tell us about, you have the institutional memory, and you've been with CPAMO practically since the beginning.
And thank you. And I want to say thank you for circling back to the work, because it's so ingrained in my mind that I absolutely get. I think everyone in CPAMO are artists, and it's a beautiful part of the thing as well. We're practicing artists. Victoria Glazer, who does administration stuff, is a visual artist, and Julia Cato, who's our program associate, is also a dancer and a project manager in the arts. I, being a dancer and working different ways in the sector itself, came to CPAMO CPAMO started in 2009 and was an offshoot from what was then the Stanford program at Canadian Council for the Arts, that was looking at equity, diversity work with some small to mid-sized organizations. I joined CPAMO in 2010. So a year after it was formed, I joined. Prior to being through the programming, I was many times I was program coordinator. I was coordinator and program coordinator. I inherited that role from Ellen Young, who's also an artist, and was instrumental in sort of stability to the CSI, the social innovation space in Toronto as well. And I've been at it ever since. Wow, so I mean, CPAMO is primarily equity, diversity, and inclusivity within the arts sector, and it was a need that came out of different challenges that primarily APOC, Indigenous Black people of color organizations were having with finding either better avenues for presentation of their work or development, approaching development skills. And that's sort of became the work that we started to focus on primarily through our initiatives, which was gathering people together and figuring out their needs and then creating programs and supporting them in that particular way. Charles is asking what he said his brainchild. We can't go further without actually acknowledging Ontario Presents, which was then cultural impresario, I believe. And that's Warren Garrett, who led that organization, and that held for the first coalitions held our funds for about a year or two. So we were able to administer and do our very small projects that we initiated in that period of time. Yeah, that's part of the overview. So it's part of the history. And we think about the investment of time, and the time was incredibly grateful to Charles and being part of the soul. And his little videos is for his foundation. And actually put it from there. So I feel about Dr. Zeus, all the places we'll go. So some key goals that we as CPAMO have, and that is, and again, it might sound a little bit corporate, so forgive me, I'm trying to reset and decriminalize my knowledge having been in the corporate world, but looking at competencies, both personally and organizationally, whether it's cultural competencies, you can qualify many things, but in this work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, there are competencies that need to be developed. There's fundamentally that needs to happen. So the key goal is to increase those organizational and personal competencies of those that we're involved with. Accessing barriers to participation and leadership for historically marginalized audiences or artists. That is so incredibly embedded that the work every day we uncover something, but then we find it goes much deeper. So again, another goal is identifying and accessing barriers and looking at ways to dismantle them. Developing community practice, and I think over the years that has happened. And we're trying to also look at how do we structure that a little bit more so we can attract more people in. And grow it, because there's so many intersectionalities. Anti-racism is a key focus for some of the work that we're currently doing, but we recognize there's so many different ways we can do this and to partner with others that have more specialty than we know. And thinking about some of the past workshops we've done in the last 2 days, some of the organizations mentioned, there's a lot of great work out there. So making sure that we are continuing to build that community of practices and other people. And so for instance, organizational balancing. Sustainability is another theme that's come up in the last few days too. So creating strategies to not just create growth, but to sustain it. And many of me, loving theaters, I do. I see so many beautiful stories that are coming out in original works, but then they get shown once. And, they need longevity. It's not just the so-called classics that get to be replayed, but there's great work out there that I would love to see again. So that's another goal in terms of how do we work within our industry, within our community, to sustain the growth and to perpetuate it. And then, of course, connecting and engaging with, I always find that language evolves, so we can say TikTok, but with various marginal equity-seeking communities, how do we engage people at different levels?
So it's not, some of the work that we've done in the organization says it probably when they say they're beggars. Well, in my organizational hat, they may be diverse in precarious roles, and that means a lot of people of color have the precarious roles, the temporary roles, the contract roles, the roles with no benefits. So we actually understand. So looking at how do we engage to bring people at the table in decision-making roles that have agency. That is, it's ongoing work. That for every step we're going forward, we take a step. There's days where some organizations are very performative. So it's about building those relationships and seeking a huge really interesting work as opposed to trying to use our really everywhere. So that's a little bit in terms of goals. So, Kevin,
I love this idea of the competencies, and as you mentioned that I think that we've worked really hard over the years to build equity competence sector, given the work that we do, and that will reach you to see different persons in different, especially different spaces in within organizations. And I want to be clear that why we chose to do that in a big part of the fight. Because that was also part of the organization as well, where we did not want to favor Black bodies to Indigenous bodies. So we decided to sort of marginalize on this particular case we talked about. Start with Indigenous bodies first, and then Black bodies, and then other bodies. So we also showed that as part of our cultural competence to say we're going to honor and working through marginalization and visualization. That we start with the first source, and that is the Indigenous bodies. So that's why, as an organization, we use big part. Others may use Black part, and I think they're interchanged in different spaces and places. That is also part of the organization competency as well. And so, one really enjoyed me even thinking about the future, thinking about my work with CPAMO in the past, is that, again, being that competency for so many organizations. And seeing also how we support racialized artists to be in different spaces, provides them access to actually seek essentials. And because we work with cultural present frontier presents, Quebec, artists. One of the main things we did was we began to think about hip-hop organization artists using presenters across Ontario. There's a really beautiful moment when we also see those particular organizations then being in the circle across and being in the circle across the country. So some of the ways, again, the competencies that we built, is basically most of the and for CPAMO Pop was organization change. These are a training program for arts organizations who have challenged, as I would say, around thinking broadly on diversity, inclusivity for the arts, and how to support them. We're bringing big coverage of that. It's a two-year by those organizations. You know, talking about some of the ways in which you work with
absolutely. It's good segue all the days. It's funny as we're preparing for this, and I'm numbering the areas of focus. There's just so many things. So one of them, and one of the reasons why I came today with the organization is education and training. And there's many different facets. So one of the things we do is CPAMO Pop. And currently we're working with 9 organizations, and we're doing some training trainers. So we go through some key content that not just to build competency awareness, but to start action planning with those organizations in terms of how are they moving things forward in their organization. So things like community engagement, conflict resolution, conflict management, equity in employment, And some of the work that I've done in the past has been around succession planning in organizations, performance management, recruitment, retention. So all of those things are very fancy, very corporate, but the key is putting an equity lens in that work. And I'm very pleased to say that working with these organizations through the CPAMO process, it's recognizing that it's not a one-off, it's not a workshop and you're done, but it is a process where organizations that are like you get to share as well. In terms of what they've done that's been successful and moving forward with markers of progress. Was been challenging, so there's a lot of idea generation. And as I said, my background being in instructional design, putting it together in a way that the information can be paid forward, and that work is done in between meetings so that we are accountable to one another and we come back with, here's what we've done with this. So that's one area to speak to. There's also organizational training that we look at. So some organizations have engaged us to just become more aware. And that, depending on where organizations are in terms of their readiness, that is something that we assess before we work with an organization. It's not about moving performance, it's about making a difference. And I mentioned training because we, as a small organization, and that's what we should also make sure we talk to our 16. That we want to make sure that we are expanding the reach. So in working with some of the other organizations, we're doing a training trigger so that they can then be part of the same things to their partners. So that's pretty exciting. That's going on right now. And we're equipping people so that they can make the content their own. It's customized to their audiences. So that's the education and training piece. I love all things in development, so I'll try my best not to get into and speak too much, but recognizing from an equity lens, people process differently. There's different accessibility needs that we take into consideration. So the great thing about this work is that as we work with different organizations, we know their community's needs, we're able to adapt the material so that it is something that's useful in different ways to access it. For instance, some people need to be more, sort of learning fluency. That's some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, some people are kinesthetic learners, so they need physical embodiment of learning. Some people develop relationships to learn. Some people need to think kind of introspectively. So intrapersonal as opposed to interpersonal. So all of those things are taken into consideration, and it's involving science, so to speak, because everything is something about how people need what they need to process effectively. So I'm very honored to be part of that, and it's a competitive, but it's very satisfying. So, Kevin, you can speak to the program, you can speak to engaging artists, and I love that, but we're creating space for existing new emerging artists that do not have the opportunity to otherwise. And I think that we need more of that. I'm glad that there's other organizations that we partner with that will also do the same. But I think we need so much more into it, so we need to talk. So we're talking about that area of focus.
Yeah, I would start with also how my program supports the organization of education training. As I, we're assigned to organizations, and we then work with this particular organizations for the two-year process. And so, for me, I'm always important to speak to those organizations or support those organizations and what their diversity competencies are, and then how they go on that. And I start by asking two services for the actions assessment. So I feel that, I've often said that when looking at equity, looking for the ways in which it works, as you mentioned, for a wide range of groups, And it's the same thing for members. So I ask everyone, what's this like? What are the things? What is diverse about it? So I just keep digging and asking them questions using this idea of the organization that has people there. And so the program became as diverse as possible, and it becomes an inclusive way. We will never ever get to too much. But if you are aware of this inclusive frameworks, then you can begin to think about how we support each other with real divergent needs. But if you don't have that sense of what it is, sometimes it's really cannot do. And it's okay to say, I understand, but it's not this is to achieve it, and it's okay because we have knowledge that we understand this particular way. So it's not my work with those organizations, because they're on the program. And looking at things like diversity studies, and you say, like, you are an art, visual artist, like, what exactly is involved in the practice? Is it collage-based work? Or when you say that you work with, like, artists who run centers of, well, do you know who each particular organization in that particular case? So that we really diversity within the organization or the membership. And most of the experience really is coming from, again, my work in the programs. When we first started, there was a need to, especially the program was big for many arts organizations, artists. And so part of my program is just survey. So we set a survey with what we want, marketing, this, that, and the top three. I find is so much in partnership or organization as well. And we execute the top three or two workshops. And that's literally how the work started. My program lens has expanded somewhat to even the support where reserving the newsletter because it's a space where we report on the things that we do. It's a space where the survey goes out. It's a space where we get engaged with the audiences in a different way. My joy is in the delivery. The workshop, the seminars, theories, conversations. So I have to be really attuned with what's happening in the sector and be forecasting what it means for the artists and which means that I'm in many spaces and places, listening, responding to the program as well. Wow, we've do so much. we have a lot of choosing resources, and I think that's one of the ways in which I enjoy. But we really put together and compile beautiful publications, beautiful developments, and we really published a book in partnership with speaking of some policy alternatives in Iowa. That book idea became something that's now called publication. So every year started in a festival, there's a publication. Every year actually there's a publication. That also came from having printing do that when we had printing, nobody wants to print this anymore. Even now, we invite a group of artists and what's within institutions to get their thoughts on this things and have a repository. Because we also need that all work is published. It's not spoken about it, but this is related in this space as an art piece. And so I see the publications.
Tangible, I see it.
Yes, yeah, and then we heard away a lot from the history of CPAMO from the shopping components, so when artists and arts organization by the way, and through the festival, I've been sort of thinking about how do we do that. So the big piece right now is the big piece that we're at right now. That's online in person. And it's whether to put back workshops and still workshops back into the space. It's whether to provide space for artists to be at any part of development in their creative work and showcase. So it's a showcase opportunity for artists, creative artists, to talk about their work, to showcase their work, And it has two sort of spaces to it. The request for submission components, which is a call that goes out to the persons in the arts community. And then the creative components. So the creative components are basically artists and companies who I will around and see, well, if you want an opportunity to actually present your price. So it's almost like we're the center of the artists and arts demonstrations. And then to our artists, it's like it's allowing for anyone out there to, submit. Right. With that submission, it's assessed or it's selected by a group of persons, including myself, the organizer, Charles, a board member, and someone who's on the top organization. And they each have the application we need. And we decide, we say, okay, what do we like about it? Who do we want to showcase that first? Et cetera, et cetera. And they, then they have the decision. And they get to be showcased. One of the beautiful parts of programming for me is projects. I see the work with the arts, the law organizations, social organizations, as an opportunity to invite them to and to complete the festival, we got new partners who come into the festival and provide space like organic advocate for members as professor. That's where we get to the artists, the artists, and those that are creative. And then also space for people that used to it, also showcase their vertical work. Then we'll talk about advocacy programming, so it's also an interesting space. There's so much more, but it's not there.
So just a recap, there's the education and training side, there's the community engagement, the programming, festival planning, we mentioned needs assessment, but basically surveys, and again, Ormsby, but needs assessment is so very important. And part of our equity work is finding out from our communities what do we need, what is going to work for you in the way that it works for you, as opposed to that the typical kind of formalized approaches, assuming what's needed. So, and it's interesting, as we do get approached for work, sometimes people don't understand that development piece. So they're like, please, how do we do this overnight? And that's not unusual in a lot of industries where they don't understand what goes behind creating, whether it's a workshop or some kind of process to help an organization. And there are steps. So we also talk about intangibilizing a lot of things that we're doing. Some of that's through action planning, through workshops, so that we're documenting actions and supporting organizations so that there are measures of success or markers of progress. There's something that says, the publications, as you mentioned. So documenting. For a lot of communities, storytelling is a big part of it. Oral stories are important, but we don't want things to get lost. So having it documented and moves things forward and helps us advocate. So advocacy is another aspect of the work. And I suspect that we'll continue to grow because the elements of the work keep expanding, and seeking grants to support our work is never expected because it is labor intensive.
I would like to touch on that piece about organizations coming to us and why we don't.
Yes.
I wouldn't say that we stay away from it. We don't do it because it's there not really institutional thing.
Right.
And we want to make sure that there is supporting institutional organizations. Rather than giving it support to people that we now have forward. We're sort of making sure that we're educating staff and board members and participants And I said this to another conference I was looking at, those reasons we were looking at newcomer artists, and it was TAU and also concept. And my main point was around the fact that we need to have institutional memory to move the work forward, not teaching the work. It's incredible. That it's important that we're not just going in and starting a fire.
Yeah.
We want to stay in to cope with you, to make sure that the diversity and inclusivity, not something that just put it as a check mark, but something we're doing in the organizations and in the practice every single day, because it's really important to do it in that particular way. And I think when organizations come to us and say they want for us to do the work, it needs to do it.
Yes,
right?
Experience of program development, policy development, but organizations have to commit to doing it. Because that's a true partnership. It tells us that they can improve what's behind what we're doing. Because again, they're contributing to something that has a very short lifespan, and that's not the goal that we can do. So maybe we should provide benefits to the institution memory. So you can speak to some of the many successes that we've had as well. But when people ask me, so how do you do this work? And why is it beneficial? So sometimes you have to kind of put that head on and talk in ways that partners will understand. There are financial benefits to doing work that's based on equity and belonging and inclusion. For instance, expanding your audience and attracting more artists to, in some cases where there's a shortage of particular talent, and planning forward and attracting students to certain types of work. So there's a benefit financially, but it is an investment because it's not an overnight benefit necessarily. Another benefit would be synergy in leadership. A lot of organizations can have leaders that are all going in different directions. So aligning with people, giving them a model of the process to move things forward in a way that sustains an organization with compassion and inclusivity and creativity. Lends itself and helps grow beautifully. Because in the corporate world where people don't think as creatively, sometimes this work can be challenging because we're just thinking about the numbers. But in creative environments, this work runs itself beautifully. Keeping in mind too that the generational workforces. Something that we need to remind ourselves of too. People that are to work longer, they will have different generations within the family. And an opportunity to make sure that all feel included and can form effective working relationships. So those are things that we know and but those coming into a particular industry or a particular best practice, they will learn from someone who has experience as well as new innovations. Someone who's been doing something for a very long time will learn new innovations. So there's some great cross pollination here. There's also the opportunity to do succession planning. So as people move on, just we're talking about very bittersweet news of Charles moving into a wonderful new opportunity. We're looking at how do we sustain CPAMO, and organizations need to all look at that. How do we bring new talent in and make sure that we're not perpetuating colonial structures, so that opportunities are offered in true and authentic ways to become artists with agency, right? That's the big thing, with people decision making ability. So that would give organizations longevity, another benefit. I mentioned the financial and innovation, because with a diverse set of artists or diverse workforce, we get innovation, we get different ideas, and problem solving that comes in different ways than people even thought of it, because we all bring our own biases. So doing this work ensures that we keep ourselves and that we bring different voices and ideas to the table. And with that, when people bring their authentic selves and their voices are heard and feel to making a contribution, then stick on another potential. I've experienced it where I've been with some organizations for short term because there was no agency. It was just like served a purpose. And I didn't took it not looking for the goal, so nothing. But an organization really values the benefits that I bring and wants me there. So that's some of the thinking around that. And then of course the organizations are truly authentic and do solid equity work, their reputation will precede them. And people will naturally bow to those that don't do it.
Yeah. How diverse are artists, companies, artists, who they working with? What ways are they working? What are the ways we are also diversity and inclusivity? Because we know that we want to move that particular move forward as much as possible in the art. So, the lens is about who's in the sector, who's participating in the sector, what ways are they participating? So, are they participating in organizations, or are they participating as also independent artists? And I find that that's one of the harder set of the persons working in the sector that to reach. I think we're also mindful of the things we've been talking about this particular conferences, right? So moving beyond precariety, right? So it's how to support a diverse way of thinking for artists as well, so that they are understanding the sector in a different way. And I think that's where some of the advocacy piece comes in. So the work with even advocating with the organizations we work with to include artists from the sector within their organization, within their programming, within their curricular frameworks in a really more wholesome and as you say, culturally competent way. So they're really understanding. One of the interesting things, even with the programming, is when I communicate with artists, you have 15 minutes. And they go, what am I supposed to do? And then I was like, I don't care. You have 15 minutes. Here's the contract. Because they work in a way where sometimes organizations and festivals go, do this, and it has to be this. And I go, prescribed. Yeah. You have an opportunity to showcase yourself. If you need for me to speak with you before and support that, I support that. Because I think it's also supporting artists. And I realize also when I communicate, and they see, creative programming, and then they assume I'm not an artist. I have to be like, wait, I'm an artist. What do you need? What ways can I help you do some of these things? What ways can I support you so that way you also feel comfortable when you arrive in the festival to showcase your work or to speak about it? Because that's also one of the missing things that I realized many years ago in one of the surveys with this idea of like, how do I speak about it? How do I speak about what I do in relationship to the sector, to the organizations, to the larger, to people that were older and more established in the field than I am. And I love empowering, especially emerging and newcomer artists in that particular way to say, this is a skill, but you too can arrive at the skill of speaking about your work. And I'm going to ask you a question as before or after your showcase. Because it's also important to be familiar with some of the ways in which you actually will need to develop. So the professional development piece, I think, with the festival is one of my joys. It's so important, so important, because it builds, as you also mentioned, and someone working on this idea, it builds a community of practice. It builds a way in which we can begin to think about the sector being healthy, not just organizations in the sector or large organizations or privileged organizations, historically privileged organizations, but everyone in the sector also being healthy.
If I can build on that too, something that you said that's so important when working with artists and just saying, here's your window. There's unlearning that happens in there that's quite valid. So it's not always being dictated to or having things prescribed, but it's building both the confidence in terms of their practice, but their confidence, and recognizing that you can shape it. You can demonstrate leadership in what you're doing, as opposed to someone telling you how it has to look. And that thinking outside of the box. And I find that such a valid opportunity, because we can feel very pressed down sometimes. We're very confined, just through conditioning.
Yes.
And providing a space that indicates, we don't have to work like that. And we work from a place of respect and compassion. I think Nova from Nova Dance said that yesterday. We give respect, we expect respect. And that's what beautiful spaces to be in, and it's very healing too.
Yeah.
So again, great to be part of that work and to remember that we always want to cultivate those healthy spaces where people can just be, and bring them their best selves.
And if I could share two examples that are really, we're talking about the themes, but you mentioned the success, and I can share two examples that I think are really distinct in my mind. The first would have been like poet Lisa Shin, who first was given an opportunity through the RFS program. Sorry. And I and Charles with each other, we were just like, she is amazing. And a year later, I said, well, I want to curate her. She now seems to be a curated artist. And she came again and delivered some amazing poetry. And it so turned out, I think it was the last year, she was named the poet laureate for Mississauga. And to see that growth and that development was absolutely amazing. Because we provided what we thought was an opportunity for her to showcase her talent and her awesomeness. And next thing you know, they're like, wow, you're the poet laureate for Mississauga. Oh, absolutely amazing. Another of her things would be, the National Ballet School. The National Ballet School was part of our CPAMO program. One of their main things was looking at how they broaden the idea of equity and diversity within the school. How they broaden in terms of like training. And last year we had the Tour de International, which is all the international ballet schools from across the country and across the world actually comes to the school. They're in training, they're in conversations, etc., etc. One of the main things that we had challenged in ballet was the sort of gender normative, right? So you're male, you're female, and you're going to do it together. But it was absolutely beautiful to see a non-gender do it, where one of the persons I taught in the summer program was given an opportunity to actually do the duet, and they did it on point and off point. And the partnering shifted and moved in different beautiful ways. And this was a Gerald Lowe piece, and it was absolutely beautiful to see that it was about the dance and the technique, not so much about the gendering of those two particular roles, even though we know that there's a lot of gender that goes on in ballet in some contemporary dance spaces. So that was really, two really solid examples of how the work that we do with organizations actually impacts the artists in some really beautiful and interesting ways.
those are great examples. I can share some that are not quite as exciting, but they're exciting to me because when I think of the administrative things going on with organizations to break down systemic barriers, we've had organizations that were just so inspired by revamping their recruitment process and being open and willing to looking at, okay, policy development and recruitment techniques, so that, for instance, removing biases by doing like a blind recruitment process, or just different things like that, where organizations were like, okay, yeah, let's get right on this, and we're very excited to get that support, not to have it done for them, but to make sure they have the support to build the process in. I find that very encouraging when I see organizations moving that forward, not just kind of going, oh yes, we'll talk about that 5 years from now, but where you see it actually happening, and revisiting their terms and revamping their language, recognizing where there may be things that have been exclusionary, and incredibly powerful. And more power to organizations that do that, because it can be tiring work. And we've also seen some of our partnering organizations advocate. So when they get pushback from their sponsors and various people who don't quite understand, and they still stand up and say, here's where we're going. That to me tells me, yes, again, we have accountability and institutional memory and a journey that's being taken, so that it's not just a checkbox item.
Yes. And I think as we wrap up, I think one of one of the most important ways in which we also arrive in spaces and within the sector is around the advocacy piece. Right? It's not just advocating only for APOC artists, but also advocating for artists across the country. And I know we've partnered with so many organizations, including we're an arts coalition. Mm-hmm. It's really important to actually be the intersection between the arts, cultural policy, and government, and with an intention to strengthen the arts. Mm-hmm. And I it's really interesting when I've been in those spaces. There's Arts Day at the City, there's Arts Day at the Hill, there's sadly, there's no Arts Day at the province. Queen's Park is a little bit harder to get into. But the role of organizations like ours to be those particular spaces, and not just have a diversity and equity lens to it, but also a lens that is about supporting more money going into the arts, supporting and speaking to politicians around the importance of the arts, supporting the conversation on diversity that is about the shifting demographic in this country, right? That we know large organizations are like, oh my God, no, people are coming because they're not subscribing, because nobody's looking at subscription anymore, because there's a thing around finances, because it costs forever to get downtown. Mm-hmm. So how do you advocate for arts in different spaces, different parts of the city? Something that is also breaking that sort of historical normative of where the arts is happening in the city, mm-hmm. and the ways in which it's providing quality of experiences for different communities. And I love doing that advocacy work, because then it's really about art and the artistic practices for persons who need it the most. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that's also part of the ways in which the policies we ask organizations to put in place, support not just the employees, because those employees, mm-hmm. are the ones who live in those communities. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting, and an anecdote I have, which is not actually my work with CPAMO, but when I was working in Mississauga with the city and with the theater space there, and they would say, "Oh, we gotta get back into communities," and I go, "What? Are we hovering? Is the theater space hovering in the air somewhere, or is it in a community?" Because when I look around, I see condominiums, I see people. We don't really go into any community, we're in a community. We need to knock on those doors. Mm-hmm. It's not a Canadian thing to do, right? People go in their house and they lock up. But we need to find a way to begin to work with those particular spaces and those communities so that they can understand that right next door is a theater space that offers this beautiful program. And we will create our language about the importance of the arts and why it's important in their overall well-being. Because at the end of the day, that's the new demographic of participants and people that is engaging with arts. So, yeah, the multifaceted work and the benefits of it is fuels my soul, and I can't wait to do it.
I think that's why we're in it. So,
any last thoughts?
I think we've covered so many of the aspects of the work, and it's going to continue to evolve. And I think as we close, we should honor our team because we have some phenomenal people that have teamed us together.
The team.
Yes.
Really? Who else is there beside me?
So, well, we have Victoria, who has been our communications manager, and she's just fantastic. She also possesses some great institutional memory, and when I'm trying to find something, she points me in the right direction, and she makes sure that communications go out. So, Victoria, I want to honor you and thank you for all your amazing work.
Yes. And I guess I should honor my rubber duck, my right hand in many spaces. But Jimmy Cato, who handled a lot of the stuff with the sort of production scheduling, managing, who keeps me on timeline, like Julia, the artist, I'm not going to follow that timeline, but I'll try to follow it as much as possible. You know, but Julia holds me down on some of, and us all on some of the production timeline pieces as well as a program associate. And I think the program associate side of CPAMO is actually a really beautiful, interesting thing for me, where we can actually then contractually employ and consult different persons with different skill sets to support the work that we do as an organization. We've had Shannon Litzenberg as a program associate, we've had Barrett, we've had Daggers as a program associate, who is really instrumental in engaging with the last service, with the LASSOs, arts service organizations. Local arts service organizations, LASSOs for short, something like, you're like, oh my God. And those are like arts, Eastern arts, Arts Etobicoke, But Pearl has a beautiful community arts practice and community age practice that really intersect with those particular organizations, and has brought to us what we have as our Living Skin Reels, which has been a part of our online programming when we were working online during the pandemic, which was actually having emerging artists speak about the ways they've been experiencing the sector. And I just want to bring up them and other program associates that I'm probably forgetting because they've been a few.
Oh, we have several. There's Sheila Wilmot. Yeah.
Clayton Lemay.
Yes.
For his cultural competency work. There's so many.
I know.
Go on our website, browse our website, and I think what's beautiful for those who are online, what's beautiful about our website is that we give open source material. So for the most part, all our publications, etc., are all our tools, everything is online as an open source for the sector and for the community.
So there's a team behind us, kind of a small but mighty team, and then program associates that are phenomenal. And then, so Kevin, maybe we should tell people how they can reach us.
Sure. Your general inquiries for CPAMO should go to info@cpamo.org. If it's something program related, it should come to programming@cpamo.org. If it's something executive director or convener related, Charles is with us until December, so it should go to executive director at cpamo.org.
And education related, organizational development related, it's education@cpamo.org.
Yes.
And when in doubt, if you go to information@cpamo.org, you can be directed accordingly. So, yeah.
And look out for a publication coming in the fall. Look out for the RFS for the next festival, which will be spring. We used to have a 2-year festival for those who are online in Wilson, and it used to be 2 years. It used to be twice a year, biannual. We're now moving to an annual festival. So yeah, we have an RFS process to look at for that. And or you could just simply email me with any inquiries that relates to programming or showcasing. And thank you.